Welcome to another Boiler House Garage video. We're doing a major service on my 1977 Vauxhall Cavalier. Just to note, this isn't a how-to video, it's just for sort of entertainment purposes. First of all, I'm going to be replacing the distributor cap. This is a Lucas unit, there's a little bit of water ingress and I've been noticing some misfire and I've had trouble with starting. You can see on this rotor arm here, there's also a Lucas part. You can just see some scoring on the contact. That's why I just rubbed it against the road when I was getting some running issues just to get me back home. Underneath this plastic cap, we can see the points. I was told that these were recently replaced by the seller of the car. Looking at them, I've got no reason to doubt that. They look in quite good condition. These are Lucas parts as well. I would like to replace these with Bosch when the time comes. Nothing majorly against Lucas. They tend to still, Lucas is still better than the intermotor and the commercial ignition parts that you can get online. Parts like that are handy if you can't get anything else and haven't got much of a budget, but they do only last a few months really before you have to change them again. Here's the part number for this plastic cap. I'm not sure if they are replaceable. It's worth just giving it a wipe down, because as you can see this is quite mucky and there's a bit of damp in the contact breaker housing. This is the Bosch part number for the rotor arm. A slightly nicer sort of quality unit than the Lucas variant, but this plastic moulding, I think this is quite an old, it's been stuck on the shelf for a while, but it should still serve its purpose. It's just a comparison of the two. Like I say, the Bosch one is slightly better made. This Bosch distributor cap, you use that little tab there that sits into the recess in the distributor. It just lets you locate it better, because if there's any rotation on this, obviously it will alter the ignition timing. This Bosch distributor cap's far better quality than the Lucas one, it's noticeably so. I've had this one on the shelf for a while actually. It's for a Manta GTE, but it does still fit this distributor. The leads, however, I am going to be reusing because I've ordered some, even though they're a little bit grotty, I've ordered some of the Magnecor HT, I think they're called. Really top quality ignition leads, but they've got a 3-week lead time on them. Now the coil lead, you want to make sure this is especially snug. So what I'm going to do is just pull the boot up a little bit, make sure that the contact is seated nicely, then put the boot over the top, because if that lead falls off, you've got no power and no hope of restarting your car. If any of the spark plug leads falls off, obviously you just lose one cylinder, and you can pull over and safely and put the lead back on. You can't do that with the coil. Now, something I've been itching to do since I got the car was to take off this rocker cover, and it is a rocker cover despite it being it's not overhead valve, we'll find it in a minute, is to get this repainted. I'm not going to go for boring black, it will be a bright colour, which you'll see shortly. Just 6 bolts to remove it. They are a little bit leaky on the CIH Opel Vauxhall engine. I'm having a bit of a job getting this one undone for some reason. The bolt here was actually cross-threaded into this wide washer thingy. Now the engine's actually red hot, as you can see, with the oil vapour coming off. This is quite gummed up and mucky in here. I just basically got the engine hot because I wanted to try and see what the clearances are on the rockers to the tops of the valve stems. This is the Opel 1.9 cam-in head engine. This little area here, there's sometimes a modification where you can collect oil where it keeps the camshaft more lubricated. The setup here is basically you have the valves and the camshafts side by side, so there's no push rods, even though you do still have rockers following the camshaft and opening the valves next to them. There's a very bizarre method of setting the clearances on here. You have to use it's a 0.3mm as the clearance you can set statically when it's put back together, but to fine adjust this, you're actually supposed to have the rocker cover off and the engine running, and you have to make some sort of shield for the camshaft timing chain which will be whizzing around. That's not something I particularly know how to do, so I'm going to leave it be. But using a slightly thinner gauge, you can just about get this under. Like I say, I think this has been set correctly when it was cold and statically set, but it hasn't been adjusted since, and it's not something I can do. You'll notice that the adjustment is different as well. You're just simply torquing the rocker backwards and forwards to set the clearance. To refit my newly painted and cleaned up rocker cover, I'm fitting a new gasket, obviously. I've added a little smear of grease because these are quite prone to leaking. Put some on the rocker cover itself as the gasket goes on, and some on the top of the head. And here's the new colour, and I've replaced this cross-threaded bolt, and also where I've had a couple of washers missing, I've cut down some bolts and put this nut on there to space it. And this is a chrome show cap. I've bought a few of these items before. I did actually buy a fuel cap for this car, but it was leaking, so I'm not using it. But it's oil cap, however, nice simple item, and really dresses the engine bay nicely. Goes well with these bright colours. I did a dab of grease on this breather pipe. It just push fits into here. This is actually a very strange breather system. The smaller pipe goes to the inlet manifold, so when you have a vacuum from deceleration and idle, the air actually comes in through this larger hole, which normally connects to the standard air box, and it pulls it all the way through here directly into the inlets to be burnt. I'd imagine when there's lower vacuum pressure, it actually goes the other way. Like I say, it's a very weird breather system. And I've just done an oil change using Mobil Super 2000s 10W40. This is the Borg & Beck oil filter part number. I've run into a slight hiccup with the water pump, so I've been supplied with the correct part for the Mark 1 Cavalier. This is a Quinton Hazel, part number's QCP 2100, and this is the part itself. The pulley and fan system on the Cavalier and early Manta is a fixed blade, and it's just driven purely by the fan belt, obviously. And somebody's upgraded the Cavalier in the past, because it is technically an upgrade to have a viscous fan. It actually spins slowly when it's cold and faster when the car's getting hot. However, the pulley, the way this attaches, it's actually fixed and pressed into the water pump assembly. You can take these off just to remove the fan blades, but unfortunately without the original fixed fan and a standard pulley, I'm not going to be able to fit this at present. So what I'm going to have to do is clean this up and reuse it. I do thankfully have a new gasket which I can use from the newly supplied pump. Previously there was no gasket, it was fitted by this sealant. So I just have to clean this up the best as I can. I think it was functioning fine. It's still a serviceable part, it's just that it's not very pretty. I did have a missing bolt, hence where I was getting a bit of a leak. But once I've cleaned up this gasket material, use the new gasket supplied with here, I can actually refit this to the car. It's just a shame I'm not going to have a sort of shiny new part that I can rely on for years to come. And I've now run into a second hiccup. Turns out that this missing bolt here on the water pump isn't missing at all. It's actually sheared off into a block, which is a bit of a pain in the backside, as you can imagine. I did make an attempt at trying to drill it out. I've got the hole reasonably central, but it's not something I can do with the equipment I've got. I am changing the thermostats, of course. The last one's a bit manky. This is a Continental Direct part. Here's the part number. I've also discovered a second broken off bolt. This is the timing cover. You can see you get a little bit of seepage of coolant. So I'm replacing the coolant, which will inevitably have a little leak, with some cheaper car plan stuff. I do use the ionised water because I'm living in a hard water area, and I think it is better for the engine overall, especially for longevity. I'm using red coolant like was in the car previously, but I have the block and the heater core have been flushed. This is the new radiator I bought. It's a 3-core, fully aluminium, classed as a racing radiator. I have had to modify it slightly as these guides here are too wide for the car. I'm replacing the hoses with these extreme, or extreme as it says, motorsport parts. This is the part number. I actually got these from France or Belgium. I think it is put 16 valve for some reason, but they do fit brilliantly, as you can see here. And a new fan belt. This is the Quinton Hazel part number. And finally, another one of these show caps to match the oil filler cap. It's just a very nice polished aluminium or chrome look cap. And this is the fan belt in place. I'll drive the car for a few miles and then re-tighten, because they do start to get they do stretch ever so slightly. And this is the oil filter location on the Opel CIH engine. Mercifully, the last person to do an oil change didn't over tighten the filter, and I could undo it by hand, and things are looking so much better.